There is a version of you that only comes out when someone is watching. And there is another version that shows up when you finally close the door. You know the moment I'm talking about. You're in the car. The building is right there. You can see the door from where you're sitting. And you have maybe 90 seconds before you have to walk through it and become whoever that day needs you to be. So you sit for just a second. Not because you're lazy, not because you're afraid, just because somewhere in the back of your chest, there's a quiet voice that says, "Here we go again." And then you get out of the car, and you walk through the door. And somewhere between the parking lot and the hallway, you make a shift that you've made so many times you don't even notice it happening anymore. The voice adjusts, the posture changes, the laugh calibrates to the room. And the version of you that was sitting quietly in the driver's seat a moment ago, that version folds itself up neatly and waits for you to come back. You know what that is? That's not weakness. That's not failure. That's the cost of performing a version of yourself that was never entirely yours to begin with. And Romans 12:2 is God looking you directly in the eye and saying, you don't have to live split like that anymore. But here's the thing. Most people read Romans 12:2 as a command, as more homework, as another item on the spiritual to-do list. Stop being worldly. Renew your mind. Try harder. And I want to show you this morning that Paul wasn't writing a to-do list. He was writing a diagnosis, and then a prescription. And when you find out what two specific Greek words actually mean, words he chose deliberately, words that carry a distinction most English translations flatten completely, this verse stops being a command and starts being the most generous invitation you've ever received. Stay with me, because where we're going this morning is not more pressure. It's a relief. Can I tell you where I learned this? Before I do, I want to make one thing clear, because it matters for everything that follows. There is a massive difference between developing a new capacity and faking a personality to survive the room. One is the chrysalis doing its work, growing something the butterfly actually needs. The other is just a heavier costume, a more sophisticated mask. What I'm about to describe is the first one, even though it took me years to see it that way. I was 15 years old, youngest of 5 kids, the one they called the runt of the litter. And I was standing behind the counter of a fast food restaurant, staring at a customer whose order wasn't ready, with absolutely nothing to say. We just stood there, both of us, staring at the fryer, staring at the floor, staring anywhere but at each other. And my boss, a man named George, walked over afterward and said something that changed my life. He said, "Next time someone has to wait, just ask them if they care that the Yankees won last night." I looked at him like he had just asked me to climb a wall. I could barely talk to people I knew. You want me to talk to strangers? But I tried it, and it worked. And then I tried it again, and it worked again. And somewhere between the counter and the next decade of my life, something got built in me. A skill, a fluency, a version of me that could walk into any room, read the atmosphere, and connect with whoever that room held. At work, I was the one who introduced the franchisees, who gave the presentations, who could make a room of strangers feel like old friends in under 10 minutes. And then I'd go home, and I'd exhale, and the quiet kid would come back. The one who kept his close friends few. The one who didn't need the room, didn't need the noise, didn't need to be on. Two versions, both real, both me. Until the day someone handed me a personality test and told me my answers were inconsistent. I nearly lost a job over it. The document said, "The way you answer questions about yourself in social situations is not consistent with how you answer questions about yourself in professional situations. You present as two different people." And they said it like it was a flaw. But here's what I want you to hear before we go any further this morning. The quiet kid wasn't the problem. He never was. What felt like an inconsistency in a personality test was actually God protecting something the job was never allowed to touch. And what George taught me at 15 wasn't a replacement for who I was. It was a development of it. The way a chrysalis doesn't destroy the caterpillar, it reorganizes it into something that was always possible. The butterfly is still in there, and so is yours. God, some of us walked in here already exhausted. Not from what we've done yet, from what we're about to perform. At different places in our lives, we aren't developing skills. We are wearing a mask, pretending to be who others want us to be. Would you just sit with us in the parking lot for one more minute? Before the day starts, before the shift happens. Just here, just real. Just you and whoever we actually are underneath it all. Amen. Paul writes something in Romans chapter 12 that most people read as a checklist. Don't conform, do renew, try harder, be different. But when you find the two Greek words hiding underneath the English translation, words Paul chose deliberately, words that describe two completely different kinds of change, this verse stops being homework. It becomes permission. Listen to this. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, His good, pleasing, and perfect will. Romans 12:2. Did you catch that? Paul doesn't say, go transform yourself. He says, be transformed. That's a passive construction. You are not the agent. You are the recipient. The transformation is something that happens to you as you cooperate with it, not something you manufacture through willpower. That changes everything about what comes next. Hold that thought. Let's sit with this. Okay, here's what I didn't see until this morning. That word conform. In Greek, Paul writes schēmatizesthe, and the root of it, schema, doesn't mean character or nature or identity. It means outward form, external pattern, fashion. It's the costume, the shape the world is pressing you into from the outside. And here's the part that stopped me. Paul uses this exact same word in 1 Corinthians to describe the current form of this world. Temporary, passing away. The schēma is not permanent. It was never built to last. It's a mold that exists for a season and then becomes irrelevant. But the pressure it applies is constant. And most of us don't notice it because it's ambient. It comes through the culture you swim in, the feed you scroll, the room you sit in every Monday morning, the approval you learned to perform for before you knew you were doing it. You know what the schēma feels like? Let me show you. It's the laugh at the work meeting, the one that comes out a half second before you've even decided if something was funny. The laugh that says, I belong here and I'm comfortable here, even on the days you're neither. That's schēma, not morphē. It's the "I'm fine, blessed" in the church lobby, said with the right inflection, at the right volume, to the right person, when what's actually happening inside has nothing to do with fine and everything to do with holding something together that's close to cracking. That's schēma, not morphē. It's the prayer that sounds like you're reading from a teleprompter, the one you say at the dinner table or in the small group, measured, polished, hitting all the right notes, while the actual prayer, the real one, the one with the desperation and the confusion and the "God, I don't even know what I'm asking for," that one stays in your chest. That's schēma, not morphē. And here's what nobody talks about. The schēma is expensive. Not in ways that show up on a bank statement, in ways that show up in your body at the end of a Tuesday. You come home from certain rooms completely wrecked, not because anything hard happened, not because there was conflict or crisis, just because you held a shape all day that isn't yours. Masking is metabolically expensive. Your body knows this even when your mind is still arguing that you're fine. The schēma is a shell, and shells don't breathe. Now here's where everything shifts. Paul doesn't say, "Don't conform," and leave it there. He knows that telling someone to stop performing without giving them something to become is just more pressure with better vocabulary. So he uses a second word, and it's not the word you'd expect. He writes, metamorphistha. And the root of that word, morphē, is not the costume. It's not the surface. It's the inner nature, the essential, permanent, God-built structure of who you actually are. Meta plus morphē, a change so complete it restructures the inner nature itself. We get our word metamorphosis from this. And I want you to think about what metamorphosis actually is, because we've said the word so many times it's lost its weight. A caterpillar doesn't perform metamorphosis. It doesn't discipline itself into having wings. It doesn't white-knuckle its way through a 12-step plan for becoming a butterfly. It does one thing. It surrenders to a biology that was written into its DNA before it ever spun the first thread of the cocoon. Inside the chrysalis, something extraordinary happens. The caterpillar's body doesn't just rearrange, it liquefies. The old structure breaks down completely, not because something went wrong, but because something is being rebuilt at the cellular level into what it was always meant to become. The butterfly was always in the caterpillar, not as potential, as design. Now look at what Paul is drawing. Schēma is the shell, external, temporary, high maintenance. Morphē is the butterfly, internal, essential, permanent. The world works on your surface. God works on your soul. One is a cage, the other is a cocoon. And here is the distinction that changes everything. A cage keeps you from becoming. A cocoon is where you become. They can look identical from the outside, but only one of them is doing the work of transformation. And remember what we noticed at the scripture reading. Metamorphistha is passive. Keep being transformed. It's not something you do. It's something you cooperate with. The caterpillar's only job is to trust the process it was built for. Yours too. So let me go back to that personality test for a moment. Because when they said my answers were inconsistent, when they put a document in front of me that said, "You present as two different people, and that is a problem," I didn't have language for what I know now. I know now that what they called inconsistency was actually two things living in me simultaneously. The schēma that George helped me build at 15, the skill, the fluency, the capacity that was genuinely developed in me. and the morphē that was there before George said a word. The quiet kid. The one who kept his friends few but kept them forever. The one who didn't need the audience. The test wanted me to pick one and call it the real me. But the skill George gave me, that wasn't a false face. That was development. That was the chrysalis biology taking a shy 15-year-old and building something he actually needed in order to become who he was always going to be. The presentations, the introductions, the ability to walk into a room and connect, those belong to me now. They grew out of the morphē, not over it. What the personality test was actually measuring, and calling a flaw, was the gap between the performed identity and the resting identity. Between the face I put on to survive certain rooms and the face I wore when nobody needed anything from me. That gap is not a character defect. That gap is the space where the morphē has been quietly refusing to disappear. How many of you are treating your quiet self like a problem right now? The version of you that doesn't fit the room. The one that keeps showing up in the honest answers, even when you try to give the right ones. The one your world has been calling inconsistent, awkward, too much, not enough. What if that's not the flaw? What if that's the butterfly? Now, Paul tells us how this happens. The transformation comes through the renewing of your mind. And the Greek word for new here is kainos, not neos, which means chronologically new, fresh off the shelf, brand new in the way a new car is new. Kainos means qualitatively new, a new kind of thing, something that didn't exist in this form before. God is not offering you a reset to factory settings. He is offering you an upgrade to something your mind has never been. The prefix ana adds the sense of upward, an upward, qualitative renewal, not restoration, elevation. And the mind being renewed isn't just your intellect. In Paul's theology, nous is the entire faculty of moral perception, the lens through which you read reality, assign meaning, recognize what's real and what's performance. A renewed nous doesn't just know different things, it sees things differently. The result Paul describes is dokimazine, the ability to test and approve God's will. That word comes from the testing of metal for purity. A craftsman who truly knows gold doesn't strain to identify what's real. They perceive it. The recognition is effortless, not because they worked harder, but because they became more themselves. That's what a renewed nous does. You stop agonizing over what God wants for your life, the way a person with perfect pitch stops asking whether a note is in tune. You perceive it. Because the morphē, the real, essential, God-built you, was designed to recognize His voice. The schēma creates static. The morphē, renewed, hears clearly. And some of us hear that, and we're already back in our heads about it, wondering whether our nous is actually renewed or just tired, whether we're perceiving correctly or just fooling ourselves. Let's step out of our heads for a minute. We've done enough head work. Let's get this into the body. I want to try something with you, and stay with me, because this isn't a stretch. This is actually theology you can feel. Cross your arms over your chest, both arms, and hold yourself. Not dramatically, just hold. Feel that? Feel the tightness, the compression, the held-in quality of it. That's the schēma. That's the shape the world has been asking you to maintain. Contained, managed, presentable, squeezed into a form that fits the mold, holds the room, passes the test. Now don't move your arms. Don't decide to open them. Just breathe in, deep, into your belly, into your chest. And as your lungs fill, do you feel what's happening? The breath is pushing outward. The inner life is expanding. And your arms, the outer structure, the held shape, the schēma, they're moving. Not because you decided to open them, because the inside got too full to stay contained. That is metamorphosis. You don't break the mold, you outgrow it. The morphē expands until the schēma simply cannot hold you anymore. Not through force, through fullness. Did you feel that? That's not a breathing exercise. That's Romans 12:2 in your rib cage. Let me say this as clearly as I can. God is not asking you to become a better performer. He is inviting you to retire the role completely. He's not coaching your mask. He's calling your real voice out of hiding. Think about a Saturday morning. No alarm. The old clothes that have lost their shape but found your soul. No pre-filtering, no curating, no checking the front camera to make sure the version the world sees is the right one. No laugh calibrated to the room. No prayer that sounds like a teleprompter. Just you. You aren't building a comment for a meeting. You aren't composing a face for a feed. You aren't performing for anyone who needs anything from you. You just are. That's not absence, that's presence. That's the morphē settling back into itself. The real shape, the essential shape, the shape God built before anyone handed you a script. The most exhausting thing you will ever do is spend your whole life being someone you're not. And the most surprising thing about transformation? It's not harder than that. It's actually rest. The world sold you conformity as the safe, easy, low-risk path. And it sold authenticity as the dangerous, exhausting, uphill battle. Paul quietly reverses that entire equation. The schēma is the hard part. The transformation is the rest. The butterfly doesn't work harder than the caterpillar. It works less, because it's finally doing what it was built for. And the morphē, the real you, the God-made you, the you that shows up on Saturday mornings and keeps its friends few but keeps them forever. That version of you is not your weakest self. That version is what you're becoming. I want to tell you about a moment that I didn't understand until years after it happened. I was at work, walking through the property, and on an oleander bush beside the path, there was a butterfly. Blue, still, like it had been waiting. I don't know what made me do it. I stretched my fingers toward it, and it landed. And it opened and closed its wings against my hand. Later, I discovered something. There is a belief, held by many Native American traditions, that if a butterfly lands on you and you make a wish, it will carry that wish upward to heaven and release it there. I don't know the theology of that, but I know the picture of it stopped me cold. Because that is the transformed self. The morphē, the real, essential, God-built you that has outgrown every shell the world tried to press you into. That is the self that carries what matters most upward, not straining, not performing, not forcing its way through on willpower, emerging, and in emerging, rising. I've thought about that butterfly a lot over the years. The quiet kid who stood at the counter, not knowing what to say. The man who wore two faces for decades and nearly lost a job for being honest about it. The person who finally, slowly, not dramatically, not in one altar call moment, but in 100 small exhales, stopped needing a title to have permission to speak. All of it was chrysalis. Every single season. And God was standing on the other side of every one of them, waiting for me to emerge. You can spend the next decade polishing the shell, or you can let it crack. Today's victory is not total transformation. It's not a complete personality overhaul by Thursday. It's not having it all figured out by the time you reach your desk. Today's victory is telling God honestly, maybe for the first time in a long time, one place you're tired of pretending. Just one. I can't hold what we've just discovered without taking it to God. Because I think some of you are still in the chrysalis. And I don't mean that as a problem. I mean that as a promise. Something is being built in there that the shell was never big enough to contain. And it's time we talk to God about it. Come with me. Before we pray, I want to do something with you. I want us to come to God with 3 things. Not a list, not a performance. Just 3 honest moments, named out loud, because what you can name, you can release. And I want you to let a real face come to mind as we move through these. Not a placeholder, someone specific. Someone you'll encounter today, or someone whose weight you've been carrying into every room you walk into. Let them show up. We're going to pray for them in a few minutes. But first, these 3 things. The first bowl is the cocoon, gratitude. For the chrysalis season, even the seasons that felt like dissolution, even the ones that looked, from the outside, like falling apart. Look around your space for one small mercy right now. The chipped mug. The blanket that actually keeps you warm. The fact that you woke up today and something in you chose to show up here. What has the cocoon produced in you that you can name this morning? Not what it cost, what it built. The patience you didn't have before. The quiet confidence that doesn't need the room's approval. The long relationships that outlasted every performance. Let your shoulders drop a little as you say it. Thank you, God, for this cocoon. It wasn't perfect, but it was shelter. The second bowl is the shed skin. Honesty. Think of one situation where you feel yourself switch the performance on. Maybe it's the office door, the church lobby, the group chat, the family dinner table where everyone expects the version of you that was decided before you had a say. Notice what happens in your body when you go into that role. The tight jaw, the laugh that comes out before you've decided if it's funny, the way your chest feels heavier once the mask is on. That old shape, your schema, you don't have to maintain it today. If it helps, unclench your hands right now. Let your fingers loosen like you're actually dropping something, because you are. God, this is the skin I'm tired of wearing. What shell are you ready to stop polishing? The third bowl is the wing. Request. What do you need God to expand in you today that the world has been trying to compress? Not a transformation plan, not a total reinvention. Just the one thing that's been pressing against the walls of the shell. The morphē pressing outward, looking for room. Maybe it's the courage to tell the truth in one conversation today. Or to rest without earning it first. Or to let the quiet, real version of you show up somewhere that only ever got the performance. God, I don't have to fly a mile today. I just have to take one step as the person you actually made me to be. Hold those three things: the cocoon's gift, the shell you're releasing, the wing that needs room. Bring them with you into this prayer. Let us pray. Our Father in heaven, we come to you this morning not as performers, not as the version of us that has it together and knows what to say. We come as the ones sitting in the parking lot, the ones who know the shift is coming and are stealing one more quiet minute before it does. And we want to thank you, before we ask you for anything, for being the God who meets us here. Not at the altar, not at the performance. Here. In the car, in the old clothes, in the honest, unfiltered, uncurated version of who we actually are. You are the God who sees the morphē, who built it, who named it good before the world ever had a chance to tell us it was inconsistent. Thank you for Romans 12:2. Not as a command we have failed, but as a promise that what you are building in us from the inside out is more real, more permanent, more essentially us than anything the world ever pressed us to become. Thank you that transformation isn't more work, it's rest. God, some of us have been holding a shape for so long we forgot it wasn't ours. We built it young. Someone handed us a script, a role, a persona, a version of ourselves that earned approval in the rooms that mattered back then. And we got good at it. Good enough that the world rewarded us for it. Good enough that we stopped questioning whether it was really us. And somewhere along the way, the shell got tight. I'm going to give you a few quiet seconds here. Let the room be still. You don't have to fill this with words. We lay this down, God. We're done pretending this old shape fits. We release it to you. Not the skills. You used George in every hard room we ever walked into to build something real and lasting in us. We're not laying that down. We're laying down the performance underneath the skill. The approval seeking underneath the competence. The fear that if the real version of us showed up, the room would go quiet. If the chrysalis has to crack for us to be free, let it crack. Now, God, we want to pray for the people we're walking toward today. There's a face that came to mind. You know who it is. The one in the meeting, the one in the lobby, the one behind the screen or across the table, or at the other end of a conversation we've been rehearsing in the car. We pray for them first, before we pray about them. For the boss or the colleague whose culture demands the costume, whose room requires a version of us that has to walk in the door before the real us can follow. God, would you soften what is hard in them? Would you meet whatever pressure they're under that makes the mold feel necessary? They may be wearing a shell of their own that nobody sees. For the people on the feed, the curated, filtered, highlight reel versions of lives we scroll and measure ourselves against. God, would you give us the grace to wish them well without making their chapter 20 the measure of our chapter 5? They're in a chrysalis too. It just photographs differently. For the family roles we inherited before anyone asked if they fit. The expectations that came with the name, the seat at the table, the thing everyone assumed we'd always be. God, would you give us the courage to show up as who you made us, even in the rooms that knew us before we did. For the version of ourselves we've been performing for people who have never actually met the Saturday morning self. God, Let today have at least one moment where the real one shows up, unannounced, unpolished, and enough. Now, God, turn this prayer around for a moment, because we're not praying from above these people, we're praying from among them. We are the boss sometimes. We are the feed sometimes. We are the one who handed someone else a script and called their real self inconsistent. We've required the performance from others that we're exhausted from giving. We've rewarded the polished version and gone quiet when the real one showed up. We've made rooms where the schēma felt safer than the morphē. Forgive us for that. And give us the grace, as we stop performing for the world, to stop requiring the performance from the people around us. To make rooms where the quiet kid is welcome, where the real laugh is enough, where "I'm not fine" doesn't need an asterisk. Let transformation in us create space for transformation around us. God, your word says in Matthew 11 that your yoke is easy and your burden is light. And we declare that today. You are not strapping performance to our backs. You are not asking the butterfly to crawl like a caterpillar to prove it earned its wings. The easy yoke is the morphē. The rest you offer is not rest from activity, it's rest from performance. Our prayers don't have to sound pretty. You hear the raw version. We declare that the transformation you began in us is not finished. It is present tense. It is ongoing. It is pressing against every shell the world ever pressed us into. And it is winning. Not through force, through fullness. We declare that the quiet self is not the weak self, the version that keeps its friends few and its center still. That version is not a problem to be fixed. That is the butterfly. And we declare today, on the authority of Romans 12:2, that we are not conforming. We are becoming. And what we are becoming is more essentially, permanently, irreversibly us than anything the world's mold ever produced. So go into your day today not as a performer. Go as someone emerging. When the 90-second moment comes, the parking lot, the pause before the door, let it be a breath, not a brace. Let it be the breath of expansion, the inner life filling up so completely that the outer shell simply cannot hold you anymore. You have the skills George gave you. Use them. They're real. They're yours now. They grew out of who you are, not over it. And you have the morphē God built before anyone handed you a script. Carry that too. Not instead of the skill, underneath it, as the ground it stands on, as the thing that doesn't change when the room changes. Walk through that door today as yourself. That is more than enough. Feel your feet on the floor right now. Feel the weight of your real self, the Saturday morning self, the quiet center self, the one God built before anyone needed anything from you, sitting here. You don't have to earn this moment. You don't have to perform for it. It's already yours. You are not inconsistent. You are not behind. You are not too much, and you are not enough. You are mid-chrysalis, and he is not finished yet. Amen. Before you go, I want to give you something to carry today. One sentence, short enough to say at a stoplight, true enough to hold up under whatever this Tuesday throws at you. I am not conforming today. I am becoming. Romans 12:2. Write it on your hand if you need to. Say it in the parking lot before you walk through the door. Come back to it when the meeting goes sideways, when the feed starts comparing, when the old schēma shows up and tries to slide back on like a comfortable costume. Not conforming, becoming. Present tense, right now, in you. I want to leave you with 5 declarations. These are not mantras. These are not wishes. These are facts rooted in the specific scriptures we walked through this morning. God is the broadcaster. You are the receiver. Right now, you are tuning to the original frequency. 1. Because God is the author of my morphē, I am fearfully and wonderfully made, not inconsistently and accidentally assembled. The quiet center of who I am is not a flaw. It is a design. Psalm chapter 139, verse 14. 2. Because God is still transforming me, present tense, right now. I am not behind. I am not broken. I am mid-chrysalis. And what is being formed in here is more permanent than anything the world ever pressed me to become. 2 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 18. 3. Because God is the source of the easy yoke. I am releasing the costume today. The performance ends here. I am not a caterpillar crawling to earn its wings. The morphē is already in me. I am becoming what I was always built to be. Matthew chapter 11, verses 28 through 30. 4. Because God is renewing my perception upward into something that has never existed before. I am learning to recognize His will the way a craftsman recognizes real gold. Not by straining, by becoming. The discernment is emerging. I can trust what I perceive. Romans chapter 12, verse 2. Dokimazein. 5. Because God is the one who wrote my story before I was ever handed a script. I am not an accident of personality. I am a deliberate design still emerging. The butterfly is already in here, and today, even a little, I am letting it out. Psalm chapter 139, verse 16. If one of those felt hard to say, that's the one to come back to this week. That is Romans chapter 12, verse 2. And that is His still small voice. If something landed for you this morning, if you felt the shell shift even a little, drop a butterfly in the comments. I want to know who's emerging today. And if you know someone who has been holding a shape that doesn't fit them, who has been told their real self is inconsistent, who is still in the chrysalis wondering if the biology is actually working, send this to them right now. It might be exactly what they need to hear before they walk through that door. Tomorrow morning, we're going to talk about what happens after the butterfly emerges. Because here's what nobody tells you. The wings are wet at first. And there's a moment between the chrysalis and the first flight where everything feels uncertain, where you're more exposed than you've ever been. And the enemy knows exactly when that moment is. I want to show you what Scripture says to do in that moment. So watch the next video. The butterfly doesn't miss the cocoon, and you won't miss the costume either. I love you, and I will see you tomorrow. If this prayer stirred something deep and you feel like you need more than words right now, please don't carry it alone. Reach out to someone you trust, a friend, a pastor, a counselor. You're worth the help, and wise support is one of God's good gifts too. You're not alone. I'm praying for you.